And when his trip was up with the Peace Corps, he came back and thought, I think I need to go to law school, so he graduated from Harvard Law School, went to Vermont, became an attorney with the district attorney's office, and got involved with environmental issues, got involved with water problems, got involved with zoning. And about that time, his father, who had a family business here back in Newbury, became sick, and so Greg came back, and for the next 20 years, very successfully ran that business. But that was just the beginning. While he was a successful businessman, he was a lawyer, he decided, I think I need another degree. And so he got a degree in environmental studies. And that's when his career and his life really changed and took off. I think his mantra at that point in his life said, if I don't do it, who will? So he did it. He did just a few things, like he started the Russell Land Trust with some other people. That was merged into the Hunting Valley Land Conservation Trust, which became the Chagrin River Land Conservancy, which became the West Reserve Land Conservancy, and he served on all those boards. About that time, he was asked to serve on the board of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. He's been on that board for a long time. He was chairman, as he was in most of the organizations he was involved with, to help clean up the Geauga River. It was mentioned by one of the singers about the burning river, which those of us who have lived here for a long time remember. A very important aspect was the Chagrin River Watershed Partners, which put together uniquely, for the first time, all the governmental units and other organizations, civic organizations and others interested in preserving the Chagrin River watershed, which is 80 miles long, as I recall, so that we are now protecting very actively that watershed from further deterioration. And on the other side, he decided, well, Russell, when he had moved from Newbury to Russell at that time, needed to have some help with their Board of the Zoning Appeals. So he served on that, became a Russell trustee, and he also served recently on the 1545 Park Board, and he reminded me that he had nothing to do with leasing the land to the Geauga Park District. You know, if you talk to him for a short period of time, you really find out what Greg is all about. He's curious about everything. Science, politics, people, no matter what you want to talk about, he has an opinion on it, he knows about it. He's very compassionate about people. He wants to know how he can improve people's lives, and everything he's done from the time that he came back to the greater Cleveland area has been aimed at making it better for all of us. As they say in Massachusetts, he's wicked smart. And that's shown with everything he's done. He's passionate about all the elements of nature: air, trees, water, animals, and especially bugs. There's something about bugs and entomology that he really, really enjoys. On top of that, he's always been way ahead of his time. And he's pulling all the rest of us up with him. He continues to say, come on, we can do better. And I think, in short, he is a real hero of conservation, and I'm so pleased that we can honor him with that award. So, Greg, where are you? There he is.
Well, hey, John, thank you for that very generous and somewhat embarrassing introduction. I can't even remember that I did all those things. It's been a great life, and I want to reflect a little bit on it as right now I'm sort of a pretty good start into my 8th decade of life, and so I can think back to an era in which the world was a lot different from it is today. I was particularly delighted to hear the talks by the young people who received their scholarship awards, because it's just nice to see their enthusiasm. It's really very, very inspiring to see there's a whole new generation, and many of you, of course, have different different ages and different walks of life are also passionately involved in this area. I want to take time to reflect back, since I go back, well into the 50s and even the 40s, reflect on some stages of the environmental movement for a few moments. I think it has changed a lot. I think we're evolving as the world evolves. Our relationship to it and our challenges and our ethical obligations to it have evolved along with it. When I grew up in Newbury, I was happy to hear Judy mention actually on a property on Pekin Road, right along an important branch of the Chagrin River. It came out of Restful Lake and Kiwanis Lake, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. It was idyllic. If you can imagine, Huck Finn growing up on the banks of the Mississippi, that was us back in the 50s. And in the 50s, it was a different world. I mean, we were so close to nature. We spent all our time outside. I can remember on this branch of the river, someone had actually dammed this long before they were into regulation. We had a wonderful wetland, and this is now actually a conservation area that has an easement owned by the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. So it's really an important conservation area. And there were so many frogs there when we grew up that if you went down anywhere near this wetland and tried to talk, you couldn't hear yourself talk. And all different types of frogs, every possible, from the bullfrogs to the little peepers, just a tin. We used to joke that if you went out in the evening, the mosquitoes would pick you up and carry you away. There were so many of them. Biting flies, deer, pheasant, fox. It was a nature paradise. I've seen that change a lot. Actually, I live now only about 5 miles from where I grew up. The era in the 50s was an era in which the world seemed limitless. It did to us as children. I'm sure most children probably feel like wherever they live, but it did seem limitless, I think, to everybody. The world was booming, the economy was booming, manufacturing was going on, and but yet we were subtly altering the natural world in ways we didn't know. We had a Christmas tree farm out in Newbury that my father and my brother and I ran in the 50s and early 60s. My brother would go out every year in June, and unfortunately there was a little insect, a little pest called the European sawfly that ate these Christmas trees, so we had to go out and spray for it. We sprayed DDT. My father would buy it in 25-pound bags, put it into a 5-gallon bucket, stir it up with his hands, put it into a sprayer. My brother and I would go out and spray for several weeks. When we came in after a day of spraying, we would be white with DDT. There was no protection whatsoever. We could only take a shower and wash it off. This was in the 50s. In 1962, Rachel Carson published Silent Spring. All of a sudden, people began to wake up. We didn't know this. Really, the era before 62 was really what I would call the first. It was the era of that the world was limitless. It wasn't anything we could do that would destroy, that would hurt us, and we could just live however we wanted, and there would be no harm. We began to wake up during the 60s. Later in the 60s, of course, we had the famous burning of the Cuyahoga River and other events which led people to realize that there was really something going on in the environment. And that started the era of environmental protection. The Clean Air Act was passed in 1970, the Clean Water Act in 1972, the Endangered Species Act in 1973. And as an indication of how things have changed, believe it or not, all 3 of those important pieces of legislation were passed without a single dissenting vote in the U.S. Senate. Everybody voted for them. Then that really started an era which was really what I would call the era of environmental fix-up or cleanup. We thought the environment was something that we were messing up, and if we could just fix it up, everything would be fine. And I took part in that. I did a lot of work when I was in law school, in working with organizations that were working on the environment. When I went to Vermont, we worked on water pollution, air pollution issues, and land use issues. And the idea then was that if we could just fix these problems, everything would be fine. What we didn't realize is that as our economy was growing and so on, it was much more of a problem to fix it. It was something that we were more deeply involved in. During the 70s, I became much more aware of a new way of thinking about the environment. The patron saint of that was Aldo Leopold, who in his seminal work, it was called the Sand County Almanac. And he introduced the idea that we were members of a community. And he called it the land. He said the land was something that we shared, and we were common citizens with all the other creatures in the land. The environment wasn't something that we could separate from us and figure that if we just took care of the environment, everything was going to be fine. The environment depended on us, and we depended on the creatures that were there and all the systems that were underlined the life that was all around us. So partly as a result of that, we became interested more in land conservation, and the whole concept of preserving the land became a central focus. As was mentioned earlier, back in '86, we formed the Russell Land Conservancy. Later on, the Chagrin River Land Conservancy with other people, and that was a sort of a very important movement for land preservation. And so that was an era in which